Okay, hello everyone. Hello everyone. Welcome to an NSCAC webinar we call Behind the Bench. And our special guest today is Scott Granville, who has written a book, which we have right here, called Direct Kicks to the World Cup. And it's showcasing grassroots greatness one player at a time. Scott, we've known each other for a long time. He's been a great friend, not just of myself, but also of the game of soccer. And we're going to talk about what he talks about in the book. It's a very fascinating book. He had a TV show called Direct Kicks, and it showed up on the City TV, and I think a few other places. We'll talk about that later. But Scott, maybe you want to fill us in a little bit more on your history.
Well, thanks a lot, John, for having me here. And yeah, we've been friends for many years. In fact, I would think that you were one of the first friends of Direct Kicks back in the day. I used to work at City TV. I was a sports producer there, and I helped with a bunch of lads in the newsroom to develop the City TV soccer team. And I was part of the team, and we're sitting around one day after a game thinking, why isn't there any kind of show out there for grassroots soccer? And we had the opportunity, because we're TV people, to have the equipment to go out and shoot a pilot. So I did that, coming up with this idea of going from town to town and showcasing what's happening in soccer in that particular town. So it was a very localized Toronto kind of show, and that's how we started it. And then very quickly, it became a national show. We realized right from the get-go that networks were interested in it. So we sold it to the Chum Network officially in 1997. It took 2 months. I literally handed it in May of 1997, and it was approved, and we were on the air at the end of August of that year. So immediately it went from a local Toronto-based TV show to across Canada. I sold it to Fox Sports World, and they loved it. So that was really where we got all the big soccer fans. Anybody that loved soccer would have Fox Sports World at the time. So yeah, it started from there. As anybody that knew the show back in the day, we went for 8 seasons. In the second season, moving on to the third season, we brought in Helen Stumbos, the Canadian national women's team star, as part of the team as a co-host with myself. And from there, it really took off. We started the first ever female soccer show and sold that to TSN and WTSN. And that's a pretty neat story, because it's the first ever women's soccer show that's ever been produced. And we're really proud of the fact that Direct Kicks, the show, was the very first sports show that we have ever seen. And I throw this out there to people that I talk to. Call me on it if I'm wrong, but I think that we were the first sports show to have 50% women and female participation. And because it was so important, and now we see 25 years later how important it really is with the new league that's been developed. So yeah, soccer in Canada, it's been crazy, hasn't it? You would know better than me.
Yeah, absolutely. And people might be wondering why the National Soccer Coaches Association, we talk to coaches, is broadcasting a topic that's television. And we have done a lot of webinars. They're a little bit different. We don't just do coaching. We did interview a Hollywood producer or someone who wrote a Hollywood script that was acted by and showed up in Hollywood. We talked to a guy who wrote fiction, novel on soccer. Anything soccer, I think, is important. And it's important for coaches. And the reason I say this is because one of our jobs as coaches, we're not just teaching passing and strategies and systems and all that stuff. We have to inspire kids so that they love the game and continue to play and pass it on to their friends and whatnot. And for a sport like soccer, which sometimes struggles to get media attention, I mean, right now, if you're watching the MLS playoffs, for example, and you tune into your local sportscast here in Toronto, and it's probably the same in Montreal, probably, and many places probably in the U.S. as well. No one's talking about, they're not seeing highlights of games unless you go on YouTube, or so it's a battle to get soccer on air. And I think if we can get soccer in the media, I think it's very, very important also to inspire the kids, because it starts from there quite often, doesn't it? I mean, I noticed a lot of your quotes from your book came from episodes like you mentioned, Cheers, or you're talking about the Three Stooges, and there's things that stick in your mind from the media. The media is very powerful. So when Scott first started his show, which was a first of its kind for soccer, which was tough enough to get on television because it's all hockey, and there wasn't a sports channel. And even so, I think it's tough to get soccer on unless you're covering games from EPL or whatnot. But you were dealing with grassroots, and I think that, you don't get the credit that you deserve for really helping kids fall in love with the game. Maybe you could talk to us about some of those early challenges when you were working with City TV, and it wasn't soccer wasn't a very big sport, very hardly ever covered, and you were talking about the owner. I don't think it was the owner, it was the GM, Moses, who really wasn't a sports guy.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about some of those stories.
Well, I'll tell you this much about Moses Neimer, and he's a pretty well-known TV guy throughout the world, really. And he was a really tough guy to penetrate. But I will say he was not a sports guy, but he understood what soccer mom was. I think that's what it was. He realized that it was a family-oriented show. He had said that it was the top 5 pilots he had ever seen. And he wasn't a sports guy. So that was really cool of him to be able to take it and allow me to run with it. And so he was tough. He was a tough guy to approach because he was so intimidating, and he still is. But that's the way he was. So the challenges I had were trying to penetrate the TSNs, to try to get in there. I mean, that was my biggest challenge, because I knew that the chum networks, which were in Ontario as well as Vancouver, Victoria, they weren't national. They weren't a national reach. I had Fox Sports World, but I wanted TSN. There was no Sportsnet at the time. Rogers Sportsnet did not exist. So TSN was the sports network that showed soccer. If everyone remembers Graham Leggett, the legend. And so he gave me tips. Call Keith Pelly, who was the president of TSN at the time. So I hounded him. So it's in the book, and about I think what you'll get more than anything is the word persistence. I had no you couldn't say no to the series. I would shake my head and smile and shake your hand if you said no, but I'd be very, very persistent. And the thing about the media, and this is really important, John, is that we're at a time in Canadian soccer where we are a year and a half away from the World Cup, and we're in really, really good shape. And I'll tell you why. And this is just a prediction that I have, and I've been saying it for the last year or so. The guy that's going to save Canadian soccer, it's not Jesse March, it's not Alphonso Davies. They're great. They are amazing. Like, our team is the most exciting team in the world, and I don't care what anyone says. We're the fastest team. I am so excited about our team. I'm excited about our coach, but I'm also, as a media guy, excited by Keith Pelly. And he's a guy who's the head of MLSE. Everyone knows his name, anybody that knows sports. Well, he's the guy that I sold Direct Kicks for Chicks to. And he's a guy who played at a level. That's what you need. You need somebody that loves the sport. And I assure you, that man loves the sport, because he played at a level that I played, which wasn't great, but at 15 or 16 years old, he's still playing at a really decent level. He wanted to play on my team in the men's league when he was 45 years old. That'll
Right.
tell you how much he loves the sport. He wanted to get back into it after 20 years of not playing. So that's how much he loves it. So we're in good hands, I think, because I think we have the power to be able to have 50 million people in Canada watch the sport, not just on One Soccer. And I love One Soccer and what they do. I'm all supportive of anything that's doing anything to help the sport. The people that work there are amazing, and I hope that it goes great, and hope that everybody. But I think that combining CBC did the CPL final, as we know.
Yeah.
These are great steps, and I think that we have good things to think about. And I'd love to have direct kicks back in the get a young kid to host it. That's what we really need, a youth-oriented show to help build the next generation. And yeah, I'd be all for that. And as you know, if you read the book, the very start of the book talks about how after almost 20 years, I have finally got all my air checks back. 125 episodes, like it's gold. I have Canadian soccer gold, and this is what I'm trying to do with my book and trying to get it out there so people will look at it and go, hey, maybe we can work together and have this gold out there for the people to see, because it teaches the next generation how to be great stars. Junior Hoylett, Christine Sinclair, Atipa Hutchinson, all these great performers. And we need to see these kids at young ages developing. So yeah.
And I mean, I was surprised there. Like, it wasn't until 2022 that you were you not able to get your hands on the all the shows that you produced?
It's a really long story, John, because part of it is, and people may or may not know, I'm not sure, the serious car accident that I was in 2005, and it really stopped. I wasn't able to work for many years, and it really affected my life. And I moved around a lot, so things got moved around and lost track of. And it was really of COVID, at COVID time when they arrived. I get this package, and it was really quite emotional that after all these years, they're in my hands. And so it kind of inspired me to write the book. And the thing is, I've written a lot of TV episodes, but never written a book before. I've written a screenplay, but not a book. And this was my first go at it, and I haven't really stopped since. I wrote 375 pages in 7 days.
Yeah, you have a lot of pages here. I was surprised actually how big it was. So for those of you who, it's called Direct Kicks. Oh, I think it shows backwards there, doesn't it?
No, I see it.
Can you read it properly?
Yeah.
It's on my screen. It's a mirror image. But Direct Kicks to the World Cup, showcasing grassroots greatness one player at a time. The true story of how a grassroots TV series helped showcase Canadian soccer explosion. And where could people get this?
You can get it on Amazon, and I'm looking to get a publishing deal as well. I think it deserves it. I think it tells a pretty good story. It's all very positive. It ends in a big crash, both my car crash as well as several things that happened afterwards. But life is one of those weird things where when you get knocked down, it's like Messi, right? When life gets messy, play like Messi and get back up.
There you
go. I was
go.
quoted by a soccer person that I know.
Oh.
One of my quotes. So I think that it's an important thing, an important lesson for kids who are soccer people. If you ever just watch Messi play, whenever he gets tackled, he gets right back up. So that's the whole point of it. And persistence, because part of the story is what we had to do. And I say we, it was a team that did this and did Direct Kicks and Direct Kicks for Chicks. I'd love to give a shout out to my producer, Scott Jardin, one of my best friends that was there in the back row, never gets any credit. Helen Stumbos, of course, was an amazing part of the team. So we had a good team. I think it's the smallest TV crew for any show ever, because we didn't have, like, our timing was really bad. Like, it was just before TFC came along, before the explosion of everything. And I wrote the book because when Alphonso Davies, if we all remember him, watching Canada qualify for the World Cup, and his reaction was so over the top in Germany when we scored. And I thought,
All right.
I did exactly what you did, Alfonso. I reacted exactly the same way that he did. So it's like we have millions of fans in Canada that react that way. And the other thing was, the broadcasters kept saying, oh, we haven't had this. And I kept thinking, no, we did have this. We covered this a long time ago. And it kind of inspired me to go, people are forgetting. There are people that forget that we were there. And I thought, hey, why not write about it and tell the story so that people will remember? And that's why I wrote it. And I'm hoping people will remember, because it's an important piece of the fabric of soccer.
Soccer history in Canada.
It's part of what if you look at the women, the new women's league, right? Every single person that's part of that's Diana Matheson, Christine Sinclair, they all started on TV on Direct Kicks or Direct Kicks for Chicks. They know that. And here's the thing, is we don't brag about that as much as we brag about the fact that they bragged about us. If it wasn't for them, the women's national team telling other people, they watched our show all the time because there was nothing else. And they respected what we did. And they also helped us out a lot by being available for interviews. Same with the men's team. Oh my goodness, Paul Pesce-Solido going out of his way at the Gold Cup to make sure that we got interviews, because we went and spent our own money to get down to California, and we just got lucky and they won. Right. You know, we were there when they win the cup in 2000, and they respected that. And we didn't get the respect from the CSA as much, maybe, but we did it. You know, we tried. And I'll say this much. When I emailed Peter Aguero, the president of the CSA, he emailed me back in 15 minutes. This was about a month ago. And I was on email chain with him, and it was amazing. And it's like, these guys are looking to do good things, and that's all positive. We got a great team, both men and women.
Yeah, it's a very exciting team. Like you said, I think our men's team is one of the most exciting teams to watch. Yeah. You know,
no question.
You know, even at the World Cup when they were playing some big names there, they fought hard, and they missed some chances. Could have changed the outcome, especially against Belgium and even Croatia. I think they missed some chances, but yeah, they're very fun to watch, very exciting to watch. You did mention that at the beginning, when you were just working with City, I think it was 1997, big news where soccer overtakes hockey as the number one participation sport. And I guess that was inspiring for you to start looking at a grassroots show, plus Pele.
Right.
You know, I remember seeing Pele for the first time, still sticks in my head.
For sure.
And you actually got a chance to meet him, and well, so did I.
Yeah. Well, I saw him play when I was in 1975. Yeah. And I tell it in the story. And this is a weird one. This is I have a very weird life. Weird things happen to me, so I wrote the book in 7 days. Right. I don't know if Stephen King can even do that, but no, I'm just challenging Stephen King to a write-off. No, but I wrote the book, and the next 7 days was going back and checking facts and checking dates, because I knew I went to see Pele when I was a kid. I had no idea when. It was like 12, 13 years old, whatever. When I went back, and it was all throughout the book, this whole Pele thing the analogy is that I saw him do a bicycle kick. So I always wanted to score a goal in a bicycle kick. And it's the theme throughout the book.
Yeah.
And then when I went to do the research, the date of the game that I saw was July 18th, 1975, which is exactly 30 days to the date of my accident.
Wow.
30 years, exactly.
Exact date. Wow.
It's the exact date.
That's
30
crazy.
years, not 28, 27, 30. Like, it's just weird. So, yes, I got to meet Pelé in 1998. He was in Toronto to promote the U.S. World Cup. I believed, and I always bragged about the interview that we had. There's myself with the big fella. But my interview was just normal. It was like what everyone else did. But my partner at the time, Patrick Reynolds, walks in. He was the last guy to interview Pelé. And he walked in with a full Pelé kit, the yellow Brazil jersey, number 10. And he walked in with a soccer ball. And everyone looked at him like, what? And he fired. We have footage of this. It's the most incredible Pelé interview because this is in a small hotel room. And he fired the ball at Pelé. And the two of them did keep-ups on camera in front of everybody. And it was like, and it ended with this incredible hug. And that's how Patrick started the interview. And I'm telling you, not many times Pelé's been interviewed probably more than any other human being.
Yeah.
And I bet you he remembered that, you know,
Probably.
Just because it was so unorthodox.
So different.
And it showed the joy. Patrick Reynolds was for people that don't know, was the host of the show in the first year. And he was a heck of a soccer player and a great guy. And boy, oh boy, when he met Pelé, he acted like he was 5 years old, like the rest of us, because it was like, my hero. So yeah, the footage was amazing. And yeah, we have all that footage that we're hoping to share in the next couple of years as we prep for 2026. Again, it's tough though, right? Because soccer is, with Canada Soccer Business controlling a lot of the media and a lot of that, there's a lot of things that we're not able to access through sponsorships and whatnot. So that's all. Everyone's running for the money because they want to have platforms that are important for the sport, for people to learn about it. And I'm just one of them. So it's whether or not it's worthy of that. We believe it is. But yeah, the bottom line is soccer's going great here in Canada, and that's the most important thing, really.
Yeah, and and I think kids are different now than they were before in terms of kids played soccer for fun. Now finding kids and some of them played other sports, and now you're finding, oh, we lost you.
Are you there?
I'm there, but I don't see your image. You may have to. You're back.
Okay.
Okay.
Back.
Don't touch anything. It's so delicate, this platform. And yes, so Helen made a comment. Hopefully she'll come back. Yeah, you'll get a recording of this. If you're on here, we got your email. You'll get a recording of this after we edit it. Takes a couple of weeks. And unfortunately, I'm the guy stuck editing it. So I'm not very good at it, but I'll do my best. Anyways, I forgot where we were, Scott.
Well, I was mentioning just about, or we were just talking about Pelé and
Pelé, right? And right. Yeah, I remember that. Pelé.
And yeah, I mean, there in the book that I've written, it's got a lot of great stories about some of the greats that we were able to, lucky enough to be able to interview. So that was a lot of fun to be able to. For me, it wasn't so much the interview that I cared about; it was playing with them. Like, I actually, for someone who played at my level, which was not like, I mean, I played at maybe university level, and then that's about it. So I was a little bit better than most people, but not near enough to get to the next level. But to actually have a chance to play with Carlos Rivas, Holger Osiak was a lot of fun to play against because he was so stern with the way
Mhm.
he told and the way he instructed you on the pitch. I played with the Lenarduzzi brothers. I played down in Mexico. It's just lucky because of the show that they
Right,
threw me into these media kind of games, and
right.
that it was just so much fun.
It's good. Right.
Yeah.
So I remember I was talking about the kids, how they've changed in that, back then when I was coaching kids, when you were talking here in the 90s, sometimes you mention a player and the kid wouldn't know who that was. We had to explain because soccer wasn't on TV. You had to explain who Beckenbauer was, or Pele, or Ronaldinho, or because they didn't see it all the time. And we're always using comparing other sports to soccer. But now, and it's totally the opposite. I get these little kids, 12-year-old kids, who are telling me who got transferred from one team to another team. I might not even know who that player was. Like these kids, they're really into the game more than they have ever been. Sometimes I'll use a quote. For example, I have, we all have drills as coaches where you might have some pylons and you pass the ball from here and go to that pylon and pass it and go there. And then there'd be a place where, maybe a kid would rest for a second before it's his turn or her turn. And so I would say, you're on deck, which, as you know, from baseball means you're the next batter. You're just kind of warming up. Well, when I use terms like that, the kids of today who are playing soccer, especially competitive soccer, they don't know what that means. They don't know what on deck means. So the kids of today, they're really into the game. I know that I think they follow it through the internet, but we'd still like to see more, coverage of the sport, not just the MLS level, but we do get to see our games on the weekends on Sportsnet or TSN or whatever, where you have to pay for it. But your everyday news or little shows like what you guys had, I think would be great, because I don't see much on grassroots on television. So yeah, we'd love to see direct kicks come back in a new form. So Scott, it's on you to try and get that going.
Well, yeah. I mean, the part of the issue, it's not so much finding, like I have seen some really good young on camera talent out there. I've actually talked to quite a few about the subject matter. But again, I spent 8 years of my life chasing sponsorships and chasing money and chasing all this. I mean, Canada Soccer Business, I think, and I didn't really detail it too much in the book, but Helen would be, Stumbus would be able to say yes to this one, because we were approached about almost a half dozen times by people like Canada Soccer Business. And I'm not surprised that they came about and that they took over the whole sport of soccer. It's not surprising because of the value of it and the growth of it. Even like years ago, we saw it. We felt it. We had on, like I said, close to a half a dozen opportunities that never quite made it because of certain circumstances. They just didn't get to be Canada Soccer Business, but they wanted to. And they wanted us part of it because they saw the value of getting kids engaged at an early age. Because then once you're engaged at an early age, you'll be engaged for life. And then you'll be the purchaser as the mother and father. So it's really simple business and marketing. But I mean, it was just timing for us. Car accidents, couldn't get back up, no support. By the time it's a cutthroat business, because as soon as like for about 2 or 3 years, there was nothing I could do wrong. I could go in and I could talk to all the top dogs and at least get their ear. Wouldn't sell them everything, but did pretty well. But as soon as you're gone for even a little bit of time, you're pushed aside and someone else will take your position, and it's tough to get back. So
Yeah, that's I think that's in a lot of business you see where you get started and someone jumps in. We lost your camera again, Scott. There you are. You're back.
am I there?
Yep, you're back. You're back. Let's hope you don't disappear on us. If anyone has any questions, it's worth waiting for. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, you can ask questions on the chat or on the Q&A. So one of the things about your show, which I thought was different, is that you used kids a lot, and including, as you know, my son, or both my sons kind of were there, and I thought that was different for the time, where you're using kids to intro, actually do a lot of things. Actually, what was your take on that? Besides having a 50% male female, which again, I thought that was revolutionary at the time. But instilling the kids, covering the women's game, covering kids, but using kids. Give us a bit more thoughts on that.
Well, it really started with the idea was started with your son, as well as a young gal named Corky Stewart. Your son, as you know, you and Marco and Joseph would hang around all the different soccer venues. And when they saw the camera rolling, Joseph in particular at the time, who was probably about 10, was just enamored with what we were doing. So it was like they were our first groupies.
Yeah.
So whenever we would go to an event, there would be soccer expos that you put on, so that we would go and try to showcase what you guys were doing and try to showcase what we were doing. We'd have these two guys follow us around. And it was so fun. So eventually, after getting them on camera and seeing that, oh boy, they're good players too. They can juggle, they can have some fun. And they represented really what Canadian grassroots soccer was all about, having fun and going out there and loving the sport. So we put them on camera and then thought, okay, well, here's a microphone. You do it. It ended up so effective to have the kids actually do the reports that we did a grassroots report. And it was a segment that we had on a weekly basis. And then it even went from there to things. I think our best show, we did 125 episodes in around there. And the best show we ever did. And I can't wait to get it out there because people haven't seen it since like the year, I think it was 1999 or maybe 2000. And your son was involved. We called it 90 Minutes. It was a spoof on 60 Minutes. And it was Corky Stewart and Joseph DeBenedictis as the host, Morley and Leslie Safer from 90 Minutes. And the backdrop was the Varsity Stadium backdrop where the Canadian women's national team were playing Australia. So to have that as the backdrop while they were doing reports was remarkable. Pretty cool. And they did such a fantastic job. So yeah, the grassroots reporters were part and parcel of the show. I would have loved to have just quit being on air and just let them do it. They were so great. We had kids of all ages, and they would be players themselves, and then they would drop the microphone and go play. And so we'd showcase them while they're playing. It was all just about having fun. And by chance, I guess luck and chance, our cameras started picking up players that were really good. And it wasn't anything that we really thought that we were going to do, but all of a sudden we see Junior Hoylett when he was 10 years old. Right. And it's like, he's being talked about by Man United coaches in England that he's going to be the next Michael Owen. Wow. From Canada. And the quotes that I have from Stephen Highway from Liverpool and all the people from Chelsea and United that talked about him, it's remarkable. So it started a lot, but then we started to realize, oh wow, we got Christine Sinclair when she was 16 years old, and kind of bumped Sportsnet out of the way and got on air before they did. And so we can brag that we were the first ones. And we had a little, it wasn't a rivalry with Sportsnet because they would kick our butt because they had so much more resources. But we traveled with Jerry Dobson and his team, and they were fantastic. Like,
Right.
you sit there and say, oh, you guys did great direct kicks, but they did too. You know, Jerry Dobson is a guy that he was a sports guy that loved sports, right? He didn't love soccer, but he fell in love with it. That's a guy
Right.
who you have to respect. Jerry Dobson. He retired a few years back. You haven't heard much from him, but boy, oh boy, Canadian soccer deserves to give that man a pat on the back, because he went from just a sport like and I'm sure he loves soccer too, but he became a passionate soccer. So
Yeah.
that's what the sport does to you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
once
No,
it
for
takes you by
sure.
the heart.
I know, that's the thing. So you discovered, I wouldn't say discovered, but you interviewed a lot of players before they became stars. So you mentioned Christine Sinclair and Junior Hoylett. Talk about Dwayne De Rosario, Carmelina Moscato, Aaron
Yep.
McLeod, Ian Hume. We already talked about Paul Pesch,
Yep.
T.B. Hutchison, Julian and Jonathan de Guzman, Catherine
Yep.
LeBlanc, Paul Stalteri.
Mm-hmm.
So you've met a lot of these and interviewed them when they were young. Maybe some stories from some of your interviews, if you can remember.
Well, I remember them all, and it's funny because I do have an insane memory. Like, when I wrote the book again in the 7 days, I didn't look up anything. I just went. It was all through. I knew exactly who it was, when it was, all that. I just didn't know specific dates, right? But I'm proud of all of the stuff that we did. But there was an incident in Mexico City that is, for me, it really stands out. Big person that up too. I was down there with Carlos Rivas, and Carlos doesn't get near the accolades that he deserves as a coach of young soccer talent. And so I went down to Mexico City with him, and he had developed or put together a team to compete with under 16, 15 boys teams from professional teams from the leagues at Mexico's professional leagues. So it was Cruz Azul's under 15 team, under 16 teams that they would be playing. And it was an all-star team that he brought down. And these guys were incredible. Like, individually, just these guys were great. One kid in particular, when you saw him touch the ball, he was the only kid out of the group that didn't do anything fancy. He didn't he didn't do anything fancy, but he stood out. And he ended up I don't know if he even played many games, but scouts were there specifically to Team Canada, because after their first win, they beat so bad in the first game that all the scout coming. Well, they started drinking water in Mexico City that they shouldn't have, the kids. So they all got sick. And I think it's the first trip and only trip that I ever did that I stayed right with the kids. Like, I stayed in their room. I think there was 4 or 5 to a room, because there was no budget for it. And I said, I'll do it. I don't care where I sleep. I just want to go down and shoot it. So I shot it all myself with my own camera. Right. And Helen didn't go because there was no budget for it. I just went to get footage, and we did a whole show. And this kid got really sick, and he got really sick, and he couldn't play, and he didn't get scouted, and he was really upset. And I put my arm around him and I said, buddy, you don't do the step overs that Ricky does, and you don't do the back heels that this other guy does, and you don't do the fancy stuff. But I assure you, you're going to be on the Canadian men's national team. And he looked at me like, what? You're going to play, and you're going to be a star. Remember that. And his name was Atiba Hutchinson. And I've never talked to Atiba since. I might have. I might have seen him after that incident, maybe at the Ontario Soccer or in Woodbridge. I might have seen him before he became, because he went over almost immediately, because he was so good. He ended up going over to Europe, and I don't know, I can't remember any interaction I had with him afterwards, but I do remember that, like, because I had never seen a Canadian player play like that. I had never seen, you remember, it was at the time, this is 1999, and the
Yeah.
best midfielder in the world was Patrick Vieira from Arsenal, the Frenchman.
Mhm.
Nobody was better. Nobody could touch that. Whenever he got the ball, no one could get the ball from him. He would
Mhm.
just use his size. Well, Atiba was half the size, but he did the same thing. The way he wouldn't let anyone get the ball from him, and they're hounding him for it. And he's just like, most people have to struggle to get the
Right.
guys off your back, and he didn't do
Right.
anything. It's like the
Right.
simplest little things that he did. And it's not like I'm some genius that I saw this, or discovered him, because obviously he was a superstar in the making. But it was one thing that I was really, I adamant with him that he was going to be
Good. We have a question here.
nothing better than having a good guy like that.
Great. We have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Did the kids that you use ever say something really embarrassing?
Yeah, embarrassing. There was a gal that we had, and she was the funniest. She should be a stand-up comedian, and she was 12 years old, but very, very bold. And that's why we got it. Like when you have a group kids yell and scream a name, there's usually one that screams a little bit louder, and one that wants to get their face in front of the camera more than the other. Always pick because the gal, and her name's Sarah McCauley. She ended up, I believe she had a full scholarship ride down in the States. She was a really, really good player. But she interviewed Jim McKinney. If people remember, Jim was the former Toronto Maple Leaf, and he was also the CTV anchor. And she did an interview with him with a mic, and I got a microphone here. And you're supposed to have good mic technique and ask the question and then go like this. Put in the mic under the person's chin so that you could hear it. But Sarah was 12 years old, so she didn't know how to do it, and she wasn't even thinking. So she would be asking a question with the microphone like this, and Jim, being a pro, go, hey, kid, and he just told her on camera that's not the proper way to do it, and it was a hilarious back and forth. That's basically the only embarrassing thing, but we put the whole thing to air as is because it was so funny, and of course Jim was just joking around and kidding around with the kids. So yeah, it was fun. Sarah McCauley, her dad Chuck McCauley is in the book because he was the head of marketing for Burger King and then the head of marketing for Blockbuster, and both times he helped Direct Kicks like you wouldn't believe as sponsor. So Sarah, I love you. Chuck, I love you. Chuck is a Scotsman and had 4 kids that played grassroots soccer at a high level, and I believe all of them had scholarships. That's how good they were. So there's always a love of the sport with guys from the UK and all around the world, right? And they're here in Canada.
Yeah. And so again, as I say, I haven't had a chance to read the full book. We're talking about Scott's book called Direct Kicks to the World Cup. You can pick it up on Amazon. And Scott's also working on a couple other books. But towards the end, you do talk quite a bit about hockey. And you took your theme, your Direct Kicks theme, grassroots and kids, and then you worked to sell it to the networks, I suppose, to the hockey people. And I think you called it slapstick. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Well, being a Canadian and knowing networks the way they work, hockey's such a big sport here in the country. So I decided I always had the idea of franchising my grassroots idea out to other sports, and hockey being the first one. So I sold the idea and concept called slapstick. Basically, it was Direct Kicks, only hockey. And it was going from town to town, showcasing what's happening in hockey in those particular towns, interviewing NHL stars and parents from the particular city. And I sold the concept to Sportsnet, to Scott Moore, who was the head and president and president, I guess you would call him, executive producer at Sportsnet at the time. And it went for 2 seasons. It was quite successful. It was 26 episodes over 2 seasons. We went to 26 different cities, showcasing that. And it was an idea that I wish we had the opportunity. I wish we had a better opportunity to get in front of professional soccer players for direct kicks, like we did with the hockey show, because the hockey show proved it. We did something that it proved a point to me that we could get and interview almost any hockey star, and we did it differently. We did it through humor and comedy. And not a single time did we ever ask an NHL player why they didn't score the night before, how they're going to play against Philadelphia tonight. We didn't care. All we cared about was making them laugh so they would come to us. So it was a very effective way of getting these guys to look like human beings in an interview, as opposed to giving you the standard answers. And we were able to do it. Everywhere we went, we were able to do it. So I wish we had had that ability, because TFC wasn't around at the time. We would have been able to make them, look more human and interact with them. I will say that I did the same thing with a basketball show and basketball series before my car accident, called Dunk City, and had a couple pretty well-known people that were hosting that show as well. So I believed in the whole concept of what we were doing. But unfortunately, timing was brutal. I mean, it didn't really work out, but the idea was there.
Yeah, and you talked about on one of your quotes there, a couple of superstars here. I guess we made Chris Chelios smirk. Try doing that.
Yeah.
And then he said, I had a tough nut. Al Belfour completely snubbed me, as he did most press guys. And he turned on a dime the second I told him it was a kid's show. He softened up immediately.
Yeah. I was told beforehand, don't ask Ed Belfour. He's gonna snub you. I said, he won't snub me. He snubbed me immediately, because he thought I was the problem is he thought I was a smartass, which I am.
Right.
But then as soon as he found out that it was a kid show, okay, he softened up. Everything, right. Okay, cool. And saying Chris Chelios was another guy, just hard ass. But what he didn't know is that we knew more about what his kid played and where his kid played and what he loved, because it's a simple thing about just reading their bios and learning a little bit about them, and then getting them with Keith Primo. If you remember Keith Primo, who was 6'5", and I think his brother was Wayne Primo. The guys were huge guys, but Keith Primo, who's 6'5", 250 pounds, in his bio says he's a Mickey Mouse fan, which is no problem, but we wanted to egg him on. So we got his brother Wayne. What the heck's with your brother and Mickey Mouse? Well, his brother just slams him on camera. So we had him go back and forth, and it was just a lot of fun. And I think, what's his name? Jerry D. Remember the comedian that does Family Feud? Well, he did that with The Score for many years after we did it. Now, we didn't start comedy in sports, but we weren't comedians either. What he did was he was a comedian, and he showed how to really do it by interviewing and making fun the entire time. And it made it entertaining for people. But that's the kind of thing that we tried to do, to try to make it entertaining for the NHL player, so he would loosen up, and they did every time.
Jerry D. Funny enough, you mentioned Jerry. He used to be a teacher, which is show. Jerry D. was about teaching. He actually taught my nephew.
Oh, is that right?
He actually taught my nephew, and then before he got into comedy, and when he got into comedy, I know we went to a few of his shows. Stand-up shows before he quit teaching and he started picking up. But he also had a good connection with the Blue Jays and helped. get my nephews working with the Blue Jays as ball boys, bat boys, stuff like that.
Nice.
So that's an interesting story there. Yeah, he was a good guy. Yeah, but yeah, comedy is always is good and for kids. So your accident kind of almost put the brakes on your career, and that was a sad day. Maybe give us a bit of insight on that, because you talk about it in the book, and
yeah, I mean, it happened in the summer of 2005, and the problem at the timing of it was trying to sell our 8th season at the time, right, to networks as well as sponsors, and kind of stopped everything almost dead in its tracks. And it was one of the kind of accidents that don't put you, like, I wasn't a quadriplegic, luckily, but I got hit on my left side. So all the damage was on my left side. So my right side's going to be affected as well. I've had 10 surgeries. It's one of those ones where you'll just never really get much better. I had both my hips done, but I still have issues because of pre-existing conditions, I guess you'd call it. So I no longer able to play sports, but grateful that I'm able to do what I can. And so I don't complain about it. I knew right away that it wasn't going to be good, or it wasn't going to be really, really bad. So you have to kind of deal with what you have. And yeah, that's about it. Onward, upward. I still do, like, I'm a very driven person. I still do push-ups every day. I've been doing them all my life, so I'm not going to stop now.
Yeah. But it did kind of slow down your career, I suppose, for a while.
Well, I don't really. I mean, it finished it, is what it did. To be honest, just because you can't get back into it, and after I had to take at least 2 or 3 years off before I could really do anything. And part of the problem was I got back into it right away. Like, if my doctor ever found out that I went to Peru, like the months after my accident, I don't know why I did, but I did, with the Ontario Soccer Association.
Oh,
it was insane. I don't know if you've ever been to South America, but it's the culture there was so crazy, because my leg was in two braces, and I couldn't move, and I had to be in the front of the bus. I witnessed, like, I don't know if you've ever, it's just the crazy, if you've been in a car accident, never want to see what I saw afterwards in South America, because I witnessed near car accidents every 2 or 3 minutes. The way that they weave in and out of traffic, the way that there was, just an example, there was a bus that we saw, and this happened every single day, that had, if you think about, let's say, just a regular school bus, 175 people in it.
Wow.
And I'm not, like, on the roof as well,
Hanging
out of the windows, and every single car has 30 people in it hanging off, and then weaving in. Think about driving down the 401 and a guy running across the 401,
right?
And you don't brake, you just beep.
Right.
I'm not joking. I never saw any deaths. I never saw any accidents. But for somebody who had just gone through what I went through and had to do that, it was, I couldn't, because of my leg. I wasn't able to get in the back of the bus. I had to be in the front, because my leg was up on because I had to put it up. It was like insane that I even went there. But yeah, so I kind of went, I'm not sure if I'm ready for this.
No.
So here's the thing. I spent some time at home with my mom and dad. That's the best job I've ever had. So Direct Kicks was great, but I had the ability, because we got a really big family. Timing was really lousy for Direct Kicks. Great for my ability to be able to be home. So that's was more than enough for me.
Right. So in your book, I don't know if we should go through the ending. I'd rather leave it for the people maybe to buy your
Sure.
book.
Sure.
But it takes a bit of a turn with some of the things that happened after the accident. And it's all fascinating reading, actually, to see. And I think you had a quote from who was that now? I forget. Someone from the media who was surprised, but said in one of their quotes, I don't have it here with me, but that it was fascinating reading, which I thought so as well. Because the book, in a way, is it's a little bit of a biography in a way, through soccer, of course, the show, but talks about how you started in the media business and then picked up soccer, went into the Direct Kick show, and then the soccer, the hockey show that you mentioned, and then right up until the end where, it's sad, but I guess at the same time, like you said, it is what it is, and I think we should let the people read that, unless you want to talk a bit about it. But
Well, I don't like to. I mean, when I did write the book, it was a joy, 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 joy. Oh, kind of at the end was like, oh, I didn't know it ended that way. Oh shit, I should have known it ended that way.
Yeah.
I sometimes when bad things happen, you pretend that they don't, and I'm pretty good at that. I'm just going, I can find something else.
Right.
I'll come up with another idea, right? So I'll just tell you that, read the book, but I'll tell you about triumph and try to just getting over stuff is that, and that's what I tried to do. It's like, okay, so just because things happen doesn't mean you hold grudges, or I don't have any grudges. I don't care. So what I did was, I thought it was pretty funny. On a bet after I got in the car accident, I got in a bet with a buddy of mine that I would win an Oscar. And so that's why I decided to concentrate, get my head off the negative and go with a positive. So I wrote a screenplay on a bet that I'd win an Oscar. And the guy was going, "You're crazy." And I went, "You think?"
Mm-hmm.
So I did, and I wrote it, and I haven't won the Oscar yet, but I will.
Okay.
It's a crazy story, and I'll just tell you this much: that it didn't sell, but the things that I did to try to sell it were pretty funny. So I ended up writing a small book, a short book that's on Amazon called "Oscar, Am I a Wiener?" And it tells the story of how I tried to sell the screenplay while I was recovering from the car accident. And I did get the okay from a Star Wars producer who loved the script. I did sneak into Drew Barrymore's film studio and offices in California. So there are some hilarious stories of what I tried to do to sell the screenplay that I guarantee would win an Oscar if anyone read it. And it's not what I wrote or anything. It's just I picked a story that's a true story that no one had written about yet. And that's how it's like. That's how you overcome any kind of negative issues. Just
Negative.
get on with it and do
Right.
something else and try to find some fun and joy in life.
So that's another book that you have.
Yes, I've written several books. I've got also a comedy book. This is it's called The Book of Tid.
Yeah.
It's 500. This is the first book, but I'm redeveloping it into 500 one-liners. It's like it's called, like, they're dad jokes that make you say uncle. They're really bad jokes.
They're bad jokes. Okay.
Yes. So that'll be available on Amazon fairly soon, probably within the next 2 weeks.
Great. Well, we'll help you promote it through some of our emails. And like I say, Scott's written the book, Direct Kicks. It's available on Amazon, and a lot of it's based on his personal life, how he started a soccer show for grassroots soccer, and maybe just some closing remarks on maybe some other things in the book. I know you talk about Hazel here, you talk about Scotty McCoist, there's all sorts of different things. There's Carlos Rivos you talked about. If there's any last, there's Chris, Craig Forrest when he was young.
Oh yeah, good old Craig.
If you want to just throw a few last minute things before we wrap up, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are a lot of great stories, I think, that are pretty funny. But you mentioned Ali McCoist in that. He actually, this is hard to believe, but Ali McCoist actually played a men's league soccer game in his prime in the TSSL in our league. It's called the Media League, and he snuck on thanks to Brian Budd, who he came over on a summer trip because he's good friends with Brian Budd after the season, and he wanted to get a run in. So he ended up playing against a Scottish team called Morton in our league, the Media League. And it had been under protest for this. When I met Ali in 1999, it had been under protest for years because Ali was instructed not to take a shot on net. So he played defense, and his name was John Smith or something in the player profiles. And he cut his hair because he had really long hair. So they cut his hair really short so no one would recognize him. But every Scotsman on the other team are going, that guy looks like Ali McCoist. And I was being told the story the night that he was at TIFF. Remember the movie that he was in a movie with Robert, not De Niro, Robert, what's it? The Scottish soccer movie, Robert Duvall.
Okay.
Right. So they were at TIFF showcasing this movie, and the guys that I had played with in the Media League were telling me the story that Ali McCoist had played with them. And it's like, that can't be true. That's just no. And then Ali shows up and they have a reunion. So it was true. It's like, that would be like Wayne Gretzky going over to the UK on a summer vacation and playing in the league, and no one knows who, like a men's league, and no one knows who it is. It's just absurd, but true.
Yeah. Great. So there's a lot of great stories, folks. And like I said at the top of the webinar, what's it got to do with coaching? Inspiring kids is very important. And I think that's your job as a coach, is to inspire kids, and getting them to watch TV, being involved in the game, the tidbits is very important. And just as talking about being on air, Scott used my son, Joseph, and there's no question that being behind the camera and watching you work is one of the reasons he got into editing and doing his thing. And so thanks very much for that. You're a great mentor for my son, who's now got a career doing that. So folks, thanks very much again. If you'd like to pick up a book at Amazon, Direct Kicks, become a member of the NSCAC, just go to nscac.ca and check out some of the other webinars that we've done. Scott, thanks very much, and best of luck with the book and your other books as well.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate your time, John.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, folks.